The spaces in between, where the familiar fades into something stranger. Liminal space exists in these transitions, places that feel frozen in time, caught between presence and absence. They can be haunting or nostalgic, inviting yet unsettling, and the deeper we go, the more surreal they become. Today, we are returning to the Liminal Space Iceberg. Joined again by my co-host Nick, we are going to dive back into the depths to uncover the deepest parts of the rabbit hole. In the first half of the iceberg, we explored the well-known and the uncanny, but now we're diving further into the obscure, the unexplained, and the truly unsettling. Welcome back to the Liminal Space Iceberg.
Gregory Crewdson is an American photographer renowned for his meticulously staged cinematic photographs that depict suburban and small-town life. His work is characterized by dramatic lighting, surreal yet hyperreal compositions, and an often unsettling stillness. Crewdson's photographs are not spontaneous. They are the result of elaborate productions involving set designs, actors, and carefully orchestrated lighting, akin to a film set. Crewdson's images frequently capture moments of quiet tension or ambiguity. Common themes include isolation, longing, and the uncanny, with subjects often depicted in mundane yet heightened scenarios. These scenes are imbued with a sense of narrative, as if they are snapshots from a larger story that remains untold. This combination of stillness and applied action draws viewers in, inviting them to ponder the underlying emotions and events. Crewdson's work embodies the concept of liminal spaces through its exploration of transitional moments and ambiguous environments. His photographs often depict places that are simultaneously familiar and strange: empty suburban streets, dimly lit interiors, or foggy landscapes. These settings feel suspended in time, caught between the past and an uncertain future. The human subjects in Crewdson's work enhance the liminal quality. They are often isolated, their expressions conveying a sense of detachment or introspection. This emotional liminality mirrors the physical spaces they inhabit, creating a dual layer of disconnection and uncertainty. By presenting ordinary settings in an extraordinary way, Crewdson transforms them into spaces of transition and introspection. Gregory Crewdson's art is positioned deeper within the iceberg because of its ability to evoke complex, layered interpretations of liminality. Unlike more overt examples, his work operates on a psychological and emotional level, using everyday environments to explore themes of human vulnerability and disconnection. His inclusion in the iceberg emphasizes the idea that liminal spaces are not just physical, but can also be emotional and conceptual. Crewdson's work invites viewers to confront the unsettling beauty of being in between, whether it's between actions, emotions, or stages of life. This nuanced approach makes his photography a profound representation of liminal space, resonating with those attuned to its deeper, more introspective aspects. Magnasanti is a fictional city created in SimCity 3000, a city-building simulation game, by Filipino urban planner and gamer Vincent Ocasla. The project gained notoriety for its dystopian efficiency. Ocasla designed Magnasanti to maximize population, minimize waste, and ensure perpetual sustainability. This was achieved by exploiting the game's mechanics to create a city devoid of crime, traffic, and other inefficiencies, at the cost of its livability and humanity. Magnasanti's rigid grid layout, complete lack of cultural spaces, and oppressive uniformity make it feel cold and unhuman. The city is an extreme vision of urban planning, where the needs of the individual are sacrificed for the greatest system. There are no parks or schools, and residents live in perpetual monotony, their lives entirely dictated by the city's mechanical precision. Magnasanti represents liminal spaces in a unique way, as it embodies an artificial, in-between state that feels both futuristic and dystopian. The city's design pushes the concept of urbanization to its logical extreme, stripping away the organic, human elements that typically make a place feel alive. The result is a city that exists in a perpetual state of stasis, fully developed but devoid of growth, spontaneity, or change. This artificiality creates an unsettling liminality. Magnasanti is neither a functional city in the real world nor a dynamic simulation. It is a static experiment in efficiency. Its cold, mechanical nature makes it feel like a space where human presence is an afterthought, contributing to the eerie and detached atmosphere. Magnasanti's inclusion in the iceberg reflects its philosophical and conceptual depth as a liminal space. Unlike abandoned buildings or surreal landscapes, it is entirely fabricated, yet it evokes a profound sense of discomfort and alienation. Todd Hido is an American photographer known for his atmospheric and evocative imagery, often focusing on suburban landscapes, empty homes, and moody interiors. His photographs typically feature muted colors, soft lighting, and an almost tangible sense of quiet, creating a dreamlike and introspective mood. Hido's work explores themes of memory, solitude, and the passage of time, using empty spaces to evoke a sense of absence and emotional resonance. Hido often captures his subjects in overcast weather or at night, using natural light sources like streetlights or windows to highlight the details of his compositions. The result is an aesthetic that feels intimate yet detached, as though the viewer is glimpsing a private moment frozen in time. This tension between intimacy and distance is a hallmark of his work, imbuing his photographs with a sense of melancholy and ambiguity. Todd Hido's photography is a natural fit within the concept of liminal spaces, as it frequently portrays environments that feel transitional and emotionally charged. The empty suburban streets and dimly lit interiors in his images capture moments of stillness and uncertainty, embodying the in-between nature of liminality. Hido's use of light and shadow enhances this effect, creating spaces that feel both familiar and otherworldly. His photographs often suggest a story just out of reach, leaving viewers to fill in the gaps with their own interpretations. This ambiguity, combined with the emotional weight of his imagery, mirrors the unease and introspection commonly associated with liminal spaces. Todd Hido's work is included deeper in the iceberg due to its subtle yet profound exploration of liminality. Unlike more overt representations, his photography invites viewers to engage with the quieter, more personal aspects of transitional spaces. Hido's images resonate on both a visual and emotional level, reflecting the ways liminal spaces can evoke feelings of nostalgia, longing, and unease. His ability to capture the quiet tension of these in-between moments makes his work a compelling and nuanced representation of liminality, deserving its place in the deeper tiers of the iceberg. Worlds.com is an early 3D virtual reality platform launched in the mid-1990s, initially intended as a social hub for users to interact in shared virtual spaces. It features customizable avatars, user-created environments, and a surreal aesthetic shaped by the limitations of the time. While it never achieved mainstream popularity, Worlds.com has endured as a niche platform, attracting a dedicated user base and gaining attention in recent years for its eerie, abandoned atmosphere. Logging into Worlds.com today feels like stepping into a digital ghost town. Many of its worlds are empty, filled with outdated textures, strange architecture, and static objects that seem frozen in time. The combination of rudimentary graphics, fragmented layouts, and the occasional presence of a lone user creates an uncanny sense of isolation. This effect is compounded by the platform's fragmented navigation system, which makes exploring its many worlds feel disjointed and dreamlike. Worlds.com is a quintessential digital liminal space, Its deserted environments and outdated visuals evoke feelings of nostalgia for early internet culture while simultaneously creating a sense of unease. The platform exists in a state of transition, not entirely abandoned, but far from vibrant, mirroring the in-between nature of liminal spaces. The fragmented and surreal design of its virtual worlds further enhances its liminality. These environments often feel incomplete or nonsensical, with spatial layouts that defy conventional logic. This disorientation amplifies the sense of being suspended in a digital realm that lacks clear purpose or direction. The few active users who still inhabit the platform add to this atmosphere, their presence feeling more like echoes than active participants. Worlds.com belongs deeper in the iceberg because it represents how liminality can manifest in virtual and digital spaces. Unlike physical locations, the platform's liminal quality stems from its obsolescence and the tension between its past relevance and present obscurity. Its inclusion also highlights the evolving nature of liminal spaces in the digital age. Worlds.com is not just a relic of early internet culture. It is a space where users can experience the eerie, transitional state of being caught between the past and the future. This blend of nostalgia, disorientation, and abandonment makes it a powerful and unique example of liminality, both for its emotional resonance and its historical significance. Isao Kawada is a Japanese illustrator whose work captures a blend of serenity and unease through evocative, dreamlike imagery. His art often depicts vast, open spaces, juxtaposed with delicate human-scale details, creating a feeling of isolation with an expansiveness. The subtle interplay of light and shadow, combined with the use of soft and muted colors, lends his work a tranquil yet haunting quality. Kawada's illustrations often focus on transitional settings, quiet urban streets at twilight, empty interiors bathed in dim, natural light, and surreal landscapes where the ordinary becomes strange. These scenes are characterized by their stillness and ambiguity, giving viewers the sense that they are witnessing a fleeting moment between one state and the next. Isao Kawada's art resonates with the themes of liminal spaces through its exploration of the in-between. The quiet and often deserted settings he portrays evoke a feeling of transience and impermanence, as though the viewer has stumbled upon a moment frozen in time. The surreal, slightly distorted perspective in many of his works adds to the sense of liminality. Familiar locations take on an uncanny quality, making them feel both relatable and alien. This aligns with the core idea of liminal spaces, places that are neither fully here nor there, existing on the threshold between two realities. Kawada's use of light and color also enhances the liminal atmosphere. Soft, diffuse lighting and muted tones suggest a word shrouded in ambiguity, where clarity and resolution remain just out of reach. These choices amplify the emotional resonance of his work, drawing viewers into a state of quiet reflection. Isao Kawada's illustrations belong in this tier of the iceberg because they offer a subtle yet powerful exploration of liminality. Unlike more overt examples that rely on architectural or environmental tropes, Kawada's art captures the psychological and emotional aspects of liminal spaces. His work serves as a bridge between the visual and the conceptual, demonstrating how art can evoke the same feelings of unease and introspection that physical liminal spaces inspire. Its inclusion in the iceberg reflects the multifaceted ways liminality can be represented and experienced, transcending the boundaries of medium or genre. Echo, in the context of liminal spaces, could refer to a range of ideas or interpretations. In the case of this iceberg, the entry is ambiguous and open to interpretation, with its meanings tied to its name alone. It might point to the literal echoes often experienced in liminal spaces, those hollow, reverberating sounds that amplify the emptiness of a location. The phenomenon of an echo in an empty room, a long hallway, or a vast outdoor area, adds an auditory layer to the liminal experience. Sound, bouncing off walls or structures, creates a sense of vastness and isolation, reinforcing the transitional or abandoned quality of the space. These echoes, like a clear source or destination, much like the spaces themselves, leaving the observer suspended in a moment of uncertainty. Alternatively, echo could refer to the metaphorical echoes of the past that linger in liminal spaces. Abandoned buildings or old structures often carry a sense of history, with their silence feeling as though it's still reverberating with the remnants of past lives or activities. These metaphorical echoes evoke a sense of nostalgia and melancholy, emotions that are deeply tied to liminality. Echo's placement in the iceberg reflects its inherently abstract and interpretive nature. It doesn't directly describe a location or concept, but instead alludes to an auditory and emotional quality that enhances the liminal experience. The ambiguity of its meaning mirrors the uncertainty of liminal spaces themselves, making it an entry that invites exploration and personal interpretation. Chilla's Art is a Japanese indie game studio renowned for its atmospheric horror games, often set in mundane yet unsettling environments. The studio's games, such as The Convenience Store, The Closing Shift, and Night Delivery, are grounded in everyday Japanese life, but use eerie, liminal settings to build tension and unease. The games often take place in familiar locations, like convenience stores, apartment complexes, and rural towns. But these spaces are rendered hauntingly empty or distorted through unsettling sound design, dim lighting, and surreal events. Chilla's art games typically rely on slow pacing, environmental storytelling, and minimalistic gameplay to immerse players in their eerie worlds. Rather than relying on jump scares or traditional horror tropes, the games cultivate dread through subtle details such as flickering lights, strange noises, and the sense that something is just out of sight. This emphasis on atmosphere over action creates a deeply immersive experience. Chilla's art games are prime examples of liminal spaces in interactive media. The settings are transitional by nature, places where people pass through, like convenience stores at night or empty bus stops, yet they are rendered haunting and surreal. These spaces feel disconnected from the flow of time and reality, embodying the eerie stillness and ambiguity that define liminal spaces. The emotional impact of these spaces is heightened by the game's narrative structure. Players often assume the role of an ordinary individual performing mundane tasks, only to find themselves enveloped in a creeping sense of unease. This mirrors the existential discomfort that liminal spaces evoke, the feeling of being caught in a moment or place that is familiar yet fundamentally alien. Chilla's art games are deeper in the iceberg because of their subtle, introspective approach to horror and liminality. Unlike more of overtly surreal or abandoned spaces, their games transform the mundane into the unsettling, demonstrating how liminal spaces can exist in the ordinary. Their inclusion highlights the intersection of liminality and psychological horror. Chilla's art games invite players to confront the uncanny in everyday life, turning the ordinary into a source of dread. This unique perspective on liminal spaces makes their work an essential part of the discussion, resonating with those who find horror in the familiar. Koyaanisqatsi is a 1982 experimental documentary film directed by Godfrey Reggio, with a score by Philip Glass. The title is derived from the Hopi language, translating roughly to life out of balance. The film features no dialogue or narrative, instead relying on striking imagery and music to convey its themes. It juxtaposes sweeping natural landscapes with scenes of industrialization, urban sprawl, and human activity, creating a meditative yet unsettling exploration of humanity's impact on the world. The film's visuals are both beautiful and disorienting, ranging from slow motion footage of clouds and rivers to time-lapse shots of bustling cityscapes. These contrasts emphasize the tension between the natural world and modern society, creating a visual rhythm that feels both chaotic and hypnotic. Glass's minimalist score heightens this effect, evoking a sense of inevitability and unease as the imagery progresses from serene to overwhelming. Koyaanisqatsi embodies the concept of liminal spaces by presenting environments that feel transitional and disconnected. The film's portrayal of urban and industrial spaces often highlights their scale and emptiness, rendering them simultaneously familiar and alien. For example, highways and skyscrapers are shown as massive, almost abstract structures, stripped of the human context that gives them meaning. The time-lapse sequences emphasize a sense of disorientation and impermanence, as the relentless movement of people and vehicles blurs the boundaries between moments. This temporal distortion mirrors the existential unease of liminal spaces, where the flow of time feels skewed and one's place within it is uncertain. Koyaanisqatsi earns its place in the iceberg as a profound exploration of liminality on both a physical and existential level. Its deeper placement reflects the abstract and philosophical nature of its liminal qualities, which extend beyond individual spaces to encompass the larger human experience. The film's lack of narrative or context forces viewers to confront its imagery on an emotional and intuitive level, heightening the sense of ambiguity and unease. This ambiguity mirrors the essence of liminal spaces, where meaning and structure feel elusive. By presenting the world as both familiar and alien, Koyaanisqatsi captures the disconnection and tension that define liminality, making it a thought-provoking and essential entry in this tier.
Jandek covers. Jandek, the enigmatic and reclusive musician, has released an extensive discography of lo-fi music since the late 1970s. His album covers are often as distinctive as his sound, featuring minimalist, often haunting photographs that convey a profound sense of alienation and ambiguity. The covers frequently depict empty streets, deserted houses, or mundane objects, bathed in muted tones that evoke a feeling of detachment and unease. Occasionally, Jandek himself appears on the covers, his expressionless face adding to the mystery and disquiet. The cover's simplicity and stark aesthetic serve as a visual counterpart to Jandek's music, which often explores themes of isolation, introspection, and disconnection. The absence of clear context or narrative in the imagery invites viewers to project their own interpretations, enhancing the sense of ambiguity that permeates Jandek's work. Jandek's album covers are quintessential examples of liminal space, capturing environments that feel transitional, deserted, or emotionally charged, yet undefined. The emptiness and stillness in the images evoke a sense of waiting or suspension, as if they exist in a moment outside of time. The lack of human activity in many of the covers, combined with their muted colors and stark compositions, reinforce the idea of liminality. These spaces feel familiar yet disconnected from reality, embodying the same unease and ambiguity that characterize liminal space. Jandek covers belong deeper in the iceberg due to their niche appeal and abstract representation of liminal concepts. Unlike mainstream depictions of liminality, these images resonate on a more personal and emotional level, evoking feelings of solitude and introspection that are harder to articulate. Ferdinanda Florence. Ferdinanda Florence is a contemporary artist whose work often focuses on industrial landscapes, particularly oil refineries or factories. Her paintings capture these utilitarian spaces with an unusual softness, blending muted colors and hazy light to evoke a sense of stillness and detachment. Despite depicting industrial structures, her work avoids harsh realism, instead emphasizing the emotional atmosphere of the settings. Florence's art often centers on transitional spaces, places where industry meets nature or urban sprawl merges into emptiness. These environments, with their geometric shapes and subdued tones, carry a quiet melancholy. They are neither fully inhabited nor entirely abandoned, creating a sense of being caught between states. Florence's focus on industrial sites aligns closely with the concept of liminal space. These locations are inherently transitional, representing hubs of activity that are rarely noticed or appreciated for their aesthetic qualities. Her depiction of these quiet, atmospheric settings emphasizes their in-betweenness, both geographically and emotionally. The absence of people in Florence's work amplifies the sense of alienation and ambiguity. Her industrial structures feel disconnected from their intended purpose, existing instead as monuments to emptiness and change. This evokes the uneasy beauty of liminal space, where the familiar becomes strange and the ordinary feels otherworldly. Ferdinand de Florence's paintings belong in this tier of the iceberg because they represent a nuanced and artistic exploration of liminality. Her work captures the quiet, contemplative aspects of liminal spaces, focusing on environments often overlooked in daily life. Minecraft Alpha 1.0.16 versions. Minecraft Alpha 1.0.16, released during the early development phase of the game in 2010, represents a specific point in Minecraft's evolution that holds a unique emotional resonance for many players. The version is characterized by its simplicity, fewer blocks, limited mechanics, and a stripped-down atmosphere compared to later updates. The procedural generation of the landscapes, combined with the minimalist sound design, created an environment that felt vast, lonely, and eerily quiet. In this version, the world generation algorithm often produced surreal landscapes, such as floating islands, sheer cliffs, and endless stretches of ocean. Combined with the lack of structured gameplay and sparse ambient sound, this contributed to a feeling of exploration tinged with existential unease. The absence of complex objectives, or NPCs, gave the game an open-ended quality, emphasizing the player's isolation in a boundless, procedurally generated world. Minecraft Alpha 1.0.16 embodies liminal space concepts in both its design and emotional impact. The early Minecraft worlds felt transient and incomplete, a digital wilderness existing somewhere between creation and destruction. The minimalistic landscapes and lack of narrative direction placed players in an in-between state, neither fully immersed in a constructed story, nor entirely removed from it. The blocky, abstract visuals and ambient music amplified this effect, making the game world feel simultaneously familiar and alien. Wandering through these empty, procedurally generated terrains mirrors the experience of exploring real-world liminal spaces, where the environment feels detached from time and purpose. This version of Minecraft fits deeper in the iceberg due to its specific emotional tone and nostalgic appeal. It represents a time when the game's open-ended potential felt mysterious and unexplored, before the addition of structured gameplay elements and polished aesthetics. Your Local Breadman. Your Local Breadman is a niche creator whose work focuses on capturing eerie, dreamlike scenarios through digital art and video projects. Their content often portrays environments that are oddly familiar, yet distinctly surreal. Quiet suburban streets at night, dimly lit corridors, or abandoned playgrounds. The aesthetic they employ is often associated with liminal space, muted tones, low resolution, and emphasis on stillness or emptiness. A defining feature of Your Local Breadman's creations is the careful manipulation of space and atmosphere. By combining subtle visual distortions, ambient sound effects, and minimalist compositions, their work evokes an unsettling feeling of déjà vu. Viewers are drawn into the environments that feel recognizable, but are stripped of the context that typically grounds them. Your Local Breadman's content directly taps into the core ideas of liminal spaces by presenting settings that exist on the edge of familiarity and strangeness. These digital spaces are not just empty, they carry an emotional weight, evoking nostalgia, unease, or even quiet melancholy. The blend of mundane environments, like suburban neighborhoods or shopping malls, with surreal, out-of-place elements highlights the transitionary nature of these spaces. They seem to exist between the real and the imagined, challenging viewers to question their relationship with memory and place. Your Local Breadman belongs in this deeper tier of the iceberg due to their niche presence and the abstract nature of their work. Their content does not explain or clarify, but instead leans into ambiguity, encouraging introspection and emotional engagement. Kairo. Kairo is an abstract exploration game developed by Richard Perrin, first released in 2012. The game takes players through a series of massive, enigmatic environments filled with minimalist architecture and surreal structures. With no dialogue, text, or explicit narrative, Kairo relies entirely on visual storytelling and atmosphere, encouraging players to piece together meaning from the spaces they explore. The world of Kairo feels monumental yet desolate, with towering geometric forms, vast empty halls, and cryptic mechanisms. The game's muted color palette and ambient soundtrack enhance the sense of isolation and mystery, creating a meditative experience. The absence of clear objectives or guidance leaves players in a state of constant transition, moving from one strange dreamlike location to the next without ever fully understanding the purpose behind the journey. Kairo is a quintessential example of liminal space in digital form. Its environments are transitional by design. Players wander through seemingly abandoned, half-functional spaces that suggest a past use but provide no context for their current state. The scale of the architecture dwarfs the player, reinforcing a sense of insignificance and disorientation, often associated with liminality. The lack of characters or dialogue leaves players alone with their thoughts, heightening the emotional and psychological impact of the spaces. These settings feel like a place caught between time or purpose, echoing the quiet unease found in real-world liminal space, such as an abandoned building or unfinished construction sites. Kairo fits deeper in the iceberg because of its abstract nature and niche appeal. Unlike mainstream games that provide clear goals and explanations, Kairo offers an experience defined by ambiguity and introspection, appealing to those who find beauty and intrigue in the unfamiliar and unresolved. Aristotle Rufinus. Aristotle Rufinus is a contemporary visual artist and photographer known for capturing urban environments at their most desolate and introspective. His work often focuses on the interplay between light and shadow, using nighttime cityscapes or isolated architectural forms to evoke a sense of solitude and contemplation. His series, such as Alone Together, highlight the paradoxical experience of isolation in densely populated urban areas. Rufinus employs meticulous composition and a subdued color palette to emphasize the emptiness or stillness of his chosen subjects. His photographs strip urban spaces of their usual energy, instead presenting them as quiet, reflective, and hauntingly static. The human presence in his work is either minimal or entirely absent, enhancing the focus on the spaces themselves and the emotions they evoke. Rufinus' work aligns closely with the concept of liminal space, as his images often depict locations that feel suspended in time. His nighttime cityscapes, for example, present urban environments that are neither fully active nor completely abandoned, existing in a transitional state. The interplay of light and darkness in his photography mirrors the emotional ambiguity of liminal space, where familiarity is overshadowed by a sense of unease or detachment. By removing the bustle of daily life from urban settings, Rufinus creates a feeling of otherworldliness, where these spaces become something altogether different from their usual role. Aristotle Rufinus' work belongs in this deeper tier of the iceberg because of its conceptual depth and niche focus on urban isolation. His photographs speak to those who recognize the emotional resonance of quiet, overlooked spaces in the modern world.
Interior Worlds is a surreal exploration game developed by Andrei Bazolotin. The game immerses players in a series of unsettling dreamlike interiors that blur the line between reality and abstraction. Each environment is designed with an emphasis on isolation, eerily empty spaces, and a distorted sense of familiarity. These interiors often mimic mundane locations, such as offices, hallways, or waiting rooms, but the subtle manipulation of their layout, lighting, and ambience creates an unnerving atmosphere. The lack of narrative or guidance in interior worlds leaves players to interpret the environments on their own. The spaces feel alive, almost sentient, reacting to the player's presence in subtle ways. The experience is haunting, yet meditative, with the tension between normalcy and surrealism driving the emotional impact. The game's focus on transitional or in-between environments directly engages with the core concepts of liminal spaces. The interiors in the game appear mundane at first glance, but become progressively stranger, mimicking the dissonance often felt in real-life liminal spaces. The emptiness of the spaces amplifies the sense of unease, making players feel both present and disconnected. The way interior worlds shifts the mundane into the surreal captures the emotional core of liminal spaces, the tension between what is familiar and what feels unnervingly off. This dissonance, combined with the game's emphasis on exploration without direction, mirrors the ambiguity and isolation often associated with liminality. Interior Worlds belongs in this tier of the iceberg due to its niche appeal and artistic interpretation of liminality. As an interactive medium, it provides players with a uniquely immersive way to experience the concepts of liminal spaces, offering both a sense of wonder and quiet discomfort. Its inclusion highlights how video games can expand the understanding of liminal spaces by making them interactive and deeply personal. The emotional resonance of wandering through interior worlds solidifies its place as a thought-provoking exploration of liminality in digital art. @Unwarns is a niche Instagram account and online presence known for curating and creating visual content that focuses on themes of nostalgia, emptiness, and surreal aesthetics. The account features images of liminal spaces, often presenting empty or abandoned locations like suburban streets at dusk, vacant stairwells, or dimly lit parking lots. These images are typically edited with muted colors, soft lighting, and slight distortions that amplify their dreamlike quality. A hallmark of @Unwarns content is its ability to evoke personal and collective nostalgia. The account frequently showcases spaces that feel just familiar enough to trigger a vague memory while remaining distant and ambiguous. By blending mundane settings with an almost ethereal visual style, @Unwarns creates a unique emotional impact that resonates with followers drawn to the eerie beauty of liminal spaces. The spaces curated by @Unwarns exemplify the core characteristics of liminal spaces: transitory, ambiguous, and emotionally charged. The focus on environments such as hallways, parking lots, or suburban homes emphasize their in-betweenness, places that are neither destinations nor origins, but exist as part of a journey. The account's aesthetic choices further enhance this sense of liminality. By stripping away human presence and emphasizing the stillness of these spaces, Unwarns highlights the disconnection and introspection often felt in such settings. The visual style leans into nostalgia and surrealism, capturing the strange allure of places that feel both familiar and unsettling. Unwarns earns its place in this deeper tier of the iceberg due to its dedicated focus on liminal aesthetics and its ability to consistently evoke the emotions tied to these spaces. The account's niche appeal and curated approach make it a prominent example of how social media can be used to explore and share liminality as an artistic and emotional concept. Its inclusion highlights the growing digital communities surrounding liminal spaces, where creators and audiences come together to reflect on the quiet beauty and discomfort of these transitional settings. Jim Buckles is an artist renowned for his stylized, surreal landscapes and architectural paintings that often combine precision with a dreamlike quality. His works typically feature quiet, meticulously detailed environments such as grand estates, winding staircases, and picturesque courtyards, often illuminated by soft, ethereal light. Buckle's art frequently avoids direct human presence, focusing instead on the spaces themselves, which appear both familiar and fantastical. His use of vibrant yet muted colors, geometric patterns, and subtle distortions in perspective creates a sense of timelessness in his works. These spaces feel like places that could exist, but are removed from reality, suspended in a state that is neither wholly real nor entirely imagined. Buckle's art captures the essence of liminal spaces by portraying environments that seem to exist between two states, real and unreal, past and present, inhabited and abandoned. His settings evoke a quiet introspection, drawing the viewer into spaces that feel transitional or otherworldly. The lack of human presence in his paintings amplifies the atmosphere of solitude and stillness, which are key characteristics of liminal spaces. Additionally, the meticulous detail in his work invites viewers to linger, exploring the emotional ambiguity and surreal beauty of these environments. Jim Buckle's art occupies this tier of the iceberg because of its unique ability to blend surrealism with a sense of place that resonates deeply with the concept of liminality. His paintings don't just depict spaces, they evoke a mood, a feeling of being on the threshold of something undefined. His inclusion in this list highlights how traditional art forms like painting can contribute to the exploration of liminal spaces, offering a timeless and introspective perspective on the theme. Buckle's work is a testament to the enduring appeal of environments that challenge our perception of reality, while stirring emotions tied to nostalgia and wonder. Broken Lot Productions is an indie video production company and creative collective known for crafting surreal and unsettling short films and visual projects. Their work often delves into themes of isolation, decay, and the eerie quality of abandoned or underutilized spaces. Many of their pieces are characterized by a DIY aesthetic, utilizing low-budget techniques to create high-concept visuals that emphasize mood and atmosphere. The collective's projects frequently feature liminal spaces such as derelict buildings, desolate parking lots, and dimly lit hallways. Through clever use of sound design, lighting, and composition, Broken Lot Productions transforms these ordinary locations into hauntingly evocative environments that feel disconnected from time and reality. Broken Lot Productions' focus on transitional and underutilized environments directly engages with the concept of liminality. Their work captures the eerie beauty of spaces that exist in a state of suspension, places that seem to hold echoes of the past, but remain empty and detached from their intended purpose. The collective's use of minimal narrative and emphasis on visual storytelling aligns with the ambiguity of liminal spaces. By inviting viewers to interpret the meaning of their surreal environments, Broken Lot Productions evokes the emotional and psychological states often associated with liminal experiences, such as unease, introspection, and nostalgia. Broken Lot Productions fits into this tier of the iceberg because of its niche appeal and the highly specific emotional resonance of its work. Their ability to turn overlooked or abandoned spaces into thought-provoking visual experiences makes them a significant contributor to the cultural exploration of liminality. r/Chairs Underwater is a subreddit dedicated to one of the internet's more peculiar aesthetic niches, images of chairs submerged underwater. While the concept may initially seem absurd, the subreddit thrives on the strange and captivating visual effects of everyday objects in an entirely unexpected context. These images often feature chairs in pools, lakes, or other water-filled environments, combining the mundane with the surreal. The subreddit leans into the community's fascination with the eerie and dreamlike quality of these photos. A simple chair, often a symbol of stability and familiarity, takes on a strange new character when placed in an environment where it doesn't belong. The surrounding water adds to the intrigue, refracting light and distorting the image, creating a scene that feels both tranquil and unsettling. The submerged chairs exemplify the concept of liminality by taking a common object and placing it in a setting that defies its normal purpose. The combination of the familiar, the chair, and the unfamiliar, its underwater environment, creates a dissonance that evokes the ambiguity central to liminal spaces. The images also elicit a sense of stillness and isolation, two hallmarks of liminal aesthetics. The underwater setting feels removed from the flow of time, as though the chair has been suspended in a moment that exists outside of normal reality. This surreal juxtaposition makes the images deeply compelling, resonating with those drawn to the quiet unease of liminal environments. r/chairs underwater occupies this tier of the iceberg due to its hyperspecific focus and its ability to engage with liminal concepts in an unconventional way. The subreddit's peculiar yet intriguing subject matter illustrates how even the most ordinary objects can become profound when placed in the right context. When considering Moonrunner in the context of liminal spaces, two entities come to mind: the musical project Moonrunner 83 and the video game Moonrunner, though neither fully embodies the core tenets of liminality, leaving their classification as liminal works uncertain. Moonrunner 83 is a synthwave and retro-inspired music project that crafts atmospheric soundscapes filled with nostalgia. With tracks layered in vintage synthesizers and ambient tones, their music feels like a soundtrack for a forgotten memory or a fleeting dream. The imagery often associated with Moonrunner 83, empty neon-lit highways, quiet cityscapes at night, and solitary figures against a backdrop of endless space, echoes themes of isolation and transience. However, despite the evocative nature of Moonrunner 83's music and visuals, they don't perfectly align with liminal spaces. The project's work feels more tied to a sense of nostalgia for a time that may never have existed, rather than capturing spaces caught between two states. The aesthetics are polished and intentional, providing a sense of completeness that conflicts with the unfinished, transitional quality inherent in liminal environments. Moonrunner, the game, is a surreal exploration of desolate alien landscapes. Players navigate vast, quiet environments that are haunting in their stillness. These landscapes, with their surreal beauty and lack of clear context, initially seem to fit the aesthetic of liminal spaces. There's a pervasive feeling of solitude as players explore areas that feel abandoned, as though they were once inhabited but now exist in stasis. Yet, like Moonrunner 83, the game doesn't fully encapsulate the essence of liminal space. The alien nature of the environments leans towards surrealism rather than liminality. True liminal spaces often rely on the familiar, locations we know but find altered or incomplete. Moonrunner's otherworldly settings lack this familiarity, grounding its experience in speculative fiction more than the eerie in-betweenness central to liminal aesthetics. Neither option fits quite perfectly with the ideas of liminal space, which leads me to believe that the Moonrunner being referred to is outside of the realm of the options listed. Through searching, we were unable to find it ourselves, leaving this entry of the iceberg ambiguous and unknown.
.1993.wad 1993.wad refers to a custom level file created for Doom, the iconic first-person shooter from 1993. These .wad files were part of the modding community that arose after Doom's release, allowing players to design their own levels. While some WADs aimed for innovation or challenge, Many resulted in peculiar, disjointed creations that inadvertently evoked feelings of discomfort and disorientation. Unlike the meticulously crafted original levels, these custom maps often featured strange layouts, oversized or undersized spaces, mismatched textures, and an eerie emptiness. You might enter a cavernous room with no apparent purpose, wander through an office-like corridor that leads nowhere, or find yourself trapped in a space too small to escape. These design quirks, often born from inexperience or experimentation, created an atmosphere that feels unfinished and unsettling. The audio design in Doom amplifies this effect, echoing footsteps, the distant growl of enemies, and looping ambient noises combined with the stark emptiness of these spaces to heighten the sense of isolation. Even in the absence of immediate threats, the environments themselves feel hostile, as if they weren't meant to be traversed by the player at all. The liminality of 1993.WAD lies in its imperfections and sense of incompleteness. The environments feel abandoned, unpolished, and transitional, existing in a state between creation and abandonment. These WADs often evoke a sense of déjà vu, resembling places you've seen in a dream or half remembered from the past. The game's first-person perspective also enhances this feeling, placing the player directly in the strange environments without the buffer of a third-person view. The act of wandering through a map that feels both familiar and alien mirrors the experience of exploring liminal spaces in real life. 1993.WAD is a perfect representation of how liminality can manifest in digital spaces. Unlike traditional examples, which rely on physical or architectural elements, these custom levels create liminal experiences through their design flaws and lack of cohesion. Their placement in the iceberg reflects the way they exist as artifacts of a bygone era in gaming, frozen in time, incomplete, and deeply evocative of a specific emotional and aesthetic response. The Sydney Barber Tapes. The Sydney Barber Tapes is a YouTube short film presented in the found footage style. Heavily inspired by the Backrooms and SCP Foundation, the film explores themes of isolation and liminality through the lens of urban exploration gone wrong. According to the film's description, the narrative follows 19-year-old Sydney Barber, who vanished on October 2, 2008, while investigating an abandoned research facility in Maricopa County, Arizona. Despite extensive searches by government agencies, no traces of Sydney was found. The footage, supposedly leaked 15 years later, documents the final moments of Sydney's exploration, captured on her camcorder. The film depicts eerie, desolate environments and surreal occurrences within the research facility, culminating into a haunting, ambiguous conclusion. The blending of document-style realism and unsettling liminal imagery creates an immersive and deeply unsettling atmosphere. The Sydney Barber Tapes is a direct exploration of liminal space, both narratively and visually. The abandoned research facility represents a quintessential liminal environment, a transitional space that has been left behind, stripped of its purpose and imbued with an unsettling stillness. As Sydney ventures deeper into the facility, the space becomes increasingly surreal and disorienting, further enhancing the liminal atmosphere. The found footage style also ties into the concept of liminality by creating a sense of fragmentation and incompleteness. Viewers are only given glimpses of the story through Sydney's recordings, which heightens the sense of uncertainty and unease. This mirrors the feeling of being in between, where clarity and resolution remain just out of reach. The Sydney Barber Tapes fit deeper into the iceberg due to its blend of ambiguity, horror, and liminal aesthetics. Its narrative is rooted in mystery, inviting viewers to piece together the story through fragmented footage. The film's inspiration from the Backrooms and SCP Foundation places it in the broader tradition of internet-inspired horror, but its specific focus on abandoned spaces and surreal phenomena make it a standout representation of liminality. MM is one of the most cryptic entries on the iceberg, with no clear explanation or origin. Despite hours of searching, scouring forums, and exploring potential leads, we could not uncover what it truly refers to. Its meaning remains elusive and unknown. The possibilities are unsettling. It could reference a corrupted digital artifact, a mysterious file whose existence is fragmented and distorted. Perhaps it's tied to a forgotten location, something lost in time but lingering in memory. It might even be a measurement of something unknown. The lack of answers is what makes so disturbing. We spent hours scouring every corner of the internet to find it, but all our efforts were in vain. Maybe someone can find the answers in the comments below, but for now, remains a mystery. The origin of the first Backrooms image. The origin of the first Backrooms image is a cornerstone of the modern liminal space mythos. The photograph, depicting an empty, fluorescent-lit yellow room with stained carpets and oppressive lack of discernible exits, became widely recognized after its adoption by the Backrooms community. For years, its source was a mystery, sparking speculation about if it was a digital creation, an edited stock photo, or a real location. In 2024, internet researchers finally traced the image back to a 2003 blog documenting the renovation of a Hobbytown, USA store in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The photograph, taken during the refurbishment of a former furniture store, captured a transitional moment, an empty, functionless room awaiting repurpose. This mundane origin contrasts sharply with the eerie, infinite labyrinth that has been imagined around it, further highlighting how context can transform a space into something profoundly unsettling. The first Backrooms image is a quintessential example of a liminal space. The yellow walls, harsh fluorescent lights, and bland carpet are all elements of a space meant to be temporary, a blank slate waiting to be filled. However, its emptiness and lack of context turned it into something unnerving. The room feels abandoned, yet not decayed, familiar yet entirely alien, evoking a deep sense of unease. The fact that the image originated from a mundane store renovation further reinforces its liminality. The photograph captures a moment of transition, frozen in time, where the room has no clear purpose or function. Stripped of its inherent context, the space becomes a void, a place caught between two states, embodying the ambiguity and isolation that defined liminal space. The origin of the first Backrooms image represents the point where reality and fiction intersect. Its discovery reveals the mundane origins of one of the most iconic internet liminal spaces, while also emphasizing how easily ordinary environments can take on a surreal, haunting quality when stripped of their function. Its placement in the iceberg reflects its duality. The image is both a real, tangible photograph and a symbol of the unsettling potential of empty transitional spaces. This revelation doesn't diminish its power, but instead deepens its resonance, reminding us that the uncanny often hides in plain sight. Liminal spaces exist in the in-between, places and moments that are neither here nor there, evoking feelings of unease, nostalgia, and ambiguity. As we explored the layers of the iceberg, each entry, from the haunting backrooms to the disquieting emptiness of Gregory Crewdson's photography, revealed different facets of this concept. These spaces blur the boundaries between familiarity and strangeness, captivating us with their ambiguity. Recurring themes of transition and isolation tie the examples together, whether through physical spaces like brutalist architecture or digital creations like Minecraft Alpha. Some entries focused on visual liminality, while others delved into emotional and psychological disconnection. These examples remind us that liminality extends beyond physical locations, permeating art, memory, and media. The iceberg itself mirrors the experience of liminality. We begin in the accessible and recognizable before descending into the abstract and unsettling. Each entry challenges us to confront the unknown and find meaning in the meaningless. Liminal spaces resonate deeply because they reflect our own transitions. Moments when we are no longer who we were, but not yet who we are becoming. This fascination with the in-between will continue to inspire and unsettle, drawing us toward spaces that feel both hauntingly empty and full of possibility. In the vast world that is liminality, we are simply explorers passing through. May your interest in liminal space never fade. And as always, thank you for watching.